and deeds of the three generals. They could be brilliant and selfless, and they could be short-sighted and petty. What follows, for better and worse, is a story more ambiguous, yet more resonant to the modern soul, vexed with genuine troubles, insecurities, strengths, and contradictions. It is a story of the ancient struggles between friendship and duty, between ambition and sacrifice, of brotherhood, of rivalry, and, in the end, of victory. The only thing worse than fighting a war with allies is fighting a war without them. Winston Churchill. Prologue. December 1944. As the incisors of the Nazi jaws bit deep into the American front, a bleary-eyed Dwight Eisenhower stared at the tangle of red grease-pencil lines snaking across his smudged maps. He winced. The tall, bald general, whom every man in uniform saluted, was painfully aware of what those advancing red lines represented. Regiments cracking, support units overrun, supplies captured, men cut down along a 50-mile swath. His men. Americans. He had pored over situation maps and casualty reports for 2 days, and Ike Eisenhower saw in bright, vivid colors the truth he feared his lieutenants failed to grasp, that Hitler's latest surge through the Ardennes forest was no feint, no spoiling attack, no prelude to something else, somewhere else. It was the real show, and damned if his generals were ready for it. The great German offensive, the one no one thought possible, rolled out the day Eisenhower received his 5th star. The violent surge now threatened the lives of some 80,000 GIs who stood in the steamroller's path. American lines began to crumble, troops scurried west, and for the first moment in a very long time, the conclusion of the war seemed in doubt. And in the midst of this growing rout, one beleaguered general from Abilene, Kansas, felt the anxious gaze of 4 governments reaching all the way to his headquarters outside Paris. The vice that gripped Ike's stomach was nothing new. Over the past 2.5 years, his smooth, genial face had tightened into a pale mask. A mask etched by fatigue, depression, and anxiety. The drifting cigarette smoke parted whenever he paced, which was often. His famous grin, that resilient human feature that had charmed politicians, journalists, and generals across 3 continents, looked more like a stretched facade as each hour brought fresh tidings of disaster in the Ardennes. As he studied his maps, Ike knew the problem lay, at least in part, with his field commanders. The men were fighting like wildcats, but his field generals were stunned, reeling, almost punch-drunk from the force of Hitler's armored thrust. If something were to be done, Ike thought, he would have to shake his lieutenants out of their stupor, regroup their forces, and get them moving east again. So, on the night of December 18th, he summoned his senior commanders to a conference at 12th Army Group headquarters at the French city of Verdun. The Supreme Commander left his headquarters on the morning of December 19th, brown mud and gray slush spewing behind the tires of his armored Cadillac as he mulled the god-awful mess in which his army found itself. Preceded by jeeps crammed with stony-faced MPs, Eisenhower's entourage motored down the ancient road to Verdun, the main headquarters of his senior American Army Group commander. The convoy passed under the old stone arch that guarded the city's entrance and wound its way through Verdun's narrow streets. Soon, the caddy's wheels splashed to a muddy stop alongside an old stone barracks on the northeast edge of town. Ushered in by the commander's orderlies, Eisenhower climbed the creaking steps into a cold, dilapidated meeting room that was as colorless as his frozen cheeks. Inside the room, amid the worn wooden table, the maps, the chairs, the papers and briefcases, he surveyed his generals. Waiting in this collision of boardroom and crypt was Lieutenant General Omar Nelson Bradley. The tall, dark-eyed Missourian wore a grimace atop his plain but neatly pressed uniform, a dense shell jacket buttoned against the elements as he waited quietly near the center of the room.